I'm Alex Howard.
And I'm Amanda Silver, and this is Dirty Laundry.
Hi. We took a little bit of a break.
It's my fault.
It is your fault. Do you know why?
Terrible.
Further education.
I love being in school.
Professional development.
Oh, it's the teacher in me.
Yeah.
I love like learning and then writing like tests and being evaluated. Actually, I do.
Learning. I'm less keen on the testing.
Maybe not the evaluation part, but I do. Fine. I take it back. Maybe not the evaluation part. No one loves that, but I love continuing my learning.
So what are you learning?
So I am in child protection mediation training, and it is, it's not for the faint of heart.
No,
it is heavy stuff. So my role will be, once I finish the training, is to mediate between the children's aid societies and usually the parents. We get the office of the children's lawyer often in the mediations, and to try and find solutions once there are child protection issues.
Right. Like what? Tell us more for those that don't know.
So, for example, let's say Children's Aid we don't say apprehended anymore. So if they've now brought children to a place of safety, which is what it's called, let's say taking them from the family home and put them in either, a relative's care or foster care, because there are child protection safety concerns. The goal is to get them back in with their parents, right?
Okay.
The goal is to keep the family together if possible. And so
even if there's abuse and
even if there are, yes, but there's obviously that's where the child welfare agencies come in, and they have to put certain criteria in. And sometimes it means, parents are going through, rehab or anger management, or their charges against them or what have you, and the kids still, decisions need to be made about the kids, right? Where are they going to live for the time being? Are they going to live with grandma? Are they going to live with auntie? Are they going to be in foster care? So these decisions need to be made even on a short-term basis.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
And they need someone to mediate these issues, because there's so many parties involved. You've got parents, you've got grandparents, you've got children's aid workers, you have the office of the children's lawyer, which
all theoretically looking out for the best interest
of the kids. And so you have this big group of people.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have the children as well, if they're of, a certain age. Sometimes they're involved, sometimes. But you've all these people who are coming together to make decisions for the children to help,
God, that's tricky.
Help them in these very precarious situations. Yeah. And so that's where I will come in.
Well, good
help
for
facilitate
you.
that discussion.
Thank you for doing that work.
I'm you know what? I'm really looking forward to it.
Are you?
I am, because someone has to do it.
I know. And that's why I'm so grateful that people are doing it, because I could not.
Easy.
I don't think I could.
It's heavy stuff. It's very heavy stuff. And of course, your heart breaks for these families, right? For the whole family. And you don't want to ever see families in these situations, but there are.
Yeah.
They are there. Unfortunately, there's lots of child abuse.
I know.
And it
is a sad reality of our world.
It is. And so we have to protect the kids and the families. And so
well, good for
hopefully
you.
I can help.
Thank you for doing that work. Actually, a perfect segue into our guest today.
It really is.
So today on Dirty Laundry, we have Tina Swithin, One Mom's Battle. She is a single mom, an advocate, an author. She's a real go-getter.
She really is. She's been through a lot herself, which has brought her to this work.
Yeah. And she is doing the work that we so desperately need to see in this world, in our very broken family court system. And she's trying to change it.
She's trying to change it and really put the kids first.
Yeah.
So
she's
welcome,
amazing.
Tina.
Yay. Welcome, Tina. We're so happy to have you. This is so fun.
I am really excited to be here.
So excited to have you here.
Awesome.
We've been following you for a long time on Instagram. You have such a great following. You always post the most relatable, inspirational, things about women who are going through such a hard time in the family court system. And so we are so thrilled to have you on to talk about your work.
So let's just dive right in, Tina. We'd love to just know how you got into this work, right? Like, it's not a calling everyone takes up.
I'm going to advocate for protective parents and,
But thank goodness that you are doing this work, because we need it. But tell us how you fell into this.
Yeah. So I never set out to do this work. I really do call myself an accidental author, accidental advocate. I really do believe it found me. I was thrust into the family court system over 15 years ago when I was fighting to protect my own two daughters who were really young at the time. They were 2 and 4. And like so many people, I went in assuming that the system is just there to protect children, to, act in their best interest. And instead, I found myself in the twilight zone. The courtroom where parental rights were valued over the safety of my kids. The reality of the court was far from what I had anticipated. And on top of that, I had to represent myself. I had to act as my own attorney because of the financial abuse I had experienced during the relationship.
Yeah.
I fled with my kids to a women's shelter, which was really humbling because it was somewhere I had volunteered every year at Thanksgiving, at Christmas. And so to find myself in that place, it was really dark. And I had less than $200 to my name. I remember standing in the windowsill of the women's shelter while my daughters were sleeping in the bed next to me, trying to tap into a neighboring Wi-Fi because the shelter didn't have internet.
Yeah.
And so I was doing my first court documents from a windowsill and so I began to study the system, not just my own case, but others like mine. And it was around the 2-year mark where nothing made sense to me. I started a blog, One Mom's Battle. And originally it was started to vent to my friends and family, but it grew into something so much bigger. And I recognized that I wasn't alone. There were thousands, in the beginning, thousands, then hundreds of thousands of people all around the world navigating this system. And fast forward to today, I have really dedicated my life to reforming the system or helping to reform the system, educating people about post-separation abuse, pushing for legislative change. It has become my life.
Yeah.
Wow.
And thank goodness someone is doing this work because it is a broken system. Or, as I say about all these systems, it is succeeding by the design with which it was meant and set up to be succeeding. So I remember reading about, just in my early days of becoming a mediator and spending my life supporting people through separation and divorce, and reading about, and it's so obvious now looking back, but how the family court system is the only one where you're not given a lawyer, like a public defender.
Right.
You are, unless you can afford one,
Right,
you
or-
are self-representing. That alone to me was like, holy fuck, wait
Right.
just a minute.
Right. But
Yeah.
what I will tell you on that is, in the beginning, it felt very, I am someone who's conflict avoidant to a fault. If you're mad at me, I will be awake at 3 a.m. worrying about it. I
Ditto.
hate conflict.
Yeah.
And so to find myself in this system without representation when, my ex-husband at multiple junctures had different attorneys or at least had people in the background who were guiding him when he was self-represented, it felt so, to walk into the system I know nothing about, and then to have to form sentences and, when you're already in a place of trauma,
Yeah.
it's inhumane. But what
Yeah.
I will say now that I have seen, the reality of our system across the country, I am so glad I had no money. And I'll tell you why. I feel that those who have the financial resources, and I know we're going to touch on all of this as we go through, are targeted by people who have become part of an industrial complex, an industry that preys on this conflict. And so, I'm actually glad in hindsight, as hard as it was, that I didn't have the resources that would make me vulnerable to being targeted by people who didn't have my kids' best interest, but just wanted the money out of it.
Yeah, what a
It's
really
so
interesting perspective. But you're right. We always talk about the conflict of interest of lawyers, right? The longer the conflict goes on, the more money they're making, the more billables, yada, yada. So is it in their best interest to have it settled quickly? Well, of course not. Is it in your children's best interest? Absolutely. And so how does one navigate such a broken system? And I love that. Yeah, you were one of the lucky ones because you didn't have the money to That's wild.
Throw away on a court battle. But I guess the argument is that anyone can be self-represented, but what do you do when the other side can afford it? The other side is represented and maybe you can't. Or, in our system here, in order to get legal aid, you have to meet a certain criteria. But if you have, if you're making, I don't know, $60,000 a year and you have, a big mortgage and a house, or you can't get it. Like there's just such a
you don't qualify, but you're living paycheck to paycheck
so
and don't
can't
have
get
thousands.
So you're in the same position where you
Right.
So I'm just, obviously it's different. We're in Canada. Things are different, but there's a lot of similarities.
There's a lot of similarities.
It's the haves and the have-nots, and it's a lot.
Yeah.
And you were in a position where you were completely on your own and you were completely self-represented, doing all of the court documents by yourself from the shelter. Like what was that like?
Yeah.
Well, luckily my time at the shelter, I was grateful for having that door open for me and allowing, I packed my kids in the car at 5 a.m. one morning after they were in pajamas. We fled because I woke up to a series of really scary text messages or voicemails from my ex-husband. And I really did fear for our lives. And so, thankfully, I was there for a short period of time. And then I was able to leave because the judge recognized my ex-husband's issues and gave me exclusive use of our home, which is kind of it's not a restraining order, but it is in that category to where he's not able to enter the house.
Right.
So I left with a very false sense of security, believing, okay, we're safe now. We're protected by this piece of paper. The very next day, he entered our home and I was gone. My kids were at school, at preschool, and I was at a coffee shop working and I found out he was in the home. Absolute panic, called the police.
Yeah.
His story was that he was just concerned that we didn't have food and that he was dropping off a plate of enchiladas or whatever it was and checking on his dog. And so he portrayed this story to the court and it made him, the judge was angry, but it made him look like he was just doing something good and he didn't understand what the orders meant.
Right.
And the fact is, we didn't even have a dog in the backyard.
Stop.
And so I'm sitting there going, wait a minute. And you aren't given time to talk. You're cut off. It's abrupt. They're annoyed by the conflict. And so, they're pushing these cases through like cattle and not truly listening. If I would have had an opportunity to explain why he was there and what this was about, it could have been a different story. But there was nothing, he faced no repercussions for what he did. And in that moment, I knew we are not safe in this home. And so I had to find a tiny apartment in a college community or a college apartment complex to take my kids because I couldn't afford anything else. It was probably 800 square feet and it was, not ideal. But I remember when I saw it, it was upstairs and all I could think of is he can't spy in my windows. He can't lurk. And it gave me another false sense of security in this system.
It really does go to show that what's the saying? The squeaky wheel gets the cheese, or the loudest mouse.
Sayings.
You just have to be the loudest voice and domineering and
but also
shameless to get the attention,
but also pitiful. He presented himself as like, poor me. I just wanted to check. I'm such a good father. I wanted to make sure they had food, and I'm worried about my dog. Like, poor me. Like, I'm sort of meek and
victim.
Exactly. And I find that a lot of these personalities victimize themselves, and the court buys it. right? Often the
Absolutely.
court buys
It
it until
works.
something happens. And this is like where this is the scariest part is that they're reactive. So it's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, he went and killed his family and now we'll do something about it. Well, I'm
Right.
sorry.
Or he had a really traumatic childhood. So like
Right.
let's just, extend some sympathies. So what would have been the course of action then that we need to see from the courts if he goes and he breaks this
Right.
whatever
The court order, he did
breaks the
breach
court
it. Yeah.
order,
Yeah.
has a great story. Why not? Why is there no questioning? Why is there no second guessing? Why is there no this is a court
restraining
system
order.
whereby you
Yeah.
need theoretically evidence or some kind of
Right.
legal base for these claims. Why is it that family court doesn't really have those same sort of requirements that we see in like a criminal court?
There's no oversight, there's no accountability, there's no checks and balances. These judges are running rogue, and you make a complaint, it comes back to then there's retaliatory judicial
Right.
rulings if you try to, go above them. Appeals are expensive and rarely successful. Um, I think one thing that we are up against is that it is also a system on the other end that is overwhelmed by a lot of deadbeat parents. And
Mhm.
so when anyone steps up to the plate and they have a pulse, they're going to get 5 gold
Yeah,
stars just
right.
for pretending that they want to be involved in the
Mhm.
kids' lives. And it's tragic because
Yeah.
survivors can sit there and know exactly what is happening and that this is an act. Yet you've got judges. I remember one time the judge asked, "How long is this going to take?" And I said, "Probably about 45 minutes, Your Honor." And he laughed and he said, "I'll give you 5." And I'm thinking, if I went down to adopt a puppy this morning at the local animal regulation, it would probably take me an hour and a half
Yeah.
to
Right.
go through that process. Yet you're going to make a decision that could potentially be fatal for my kids because I was in a position that there were times where my ex-husband was so unstable and unregulated, and his world had crashed in every direction. We had lost our home, our businesses, our cars. It was not just the marriage ended. Everything that was his identity and his ego was tied into, he was in a very scary place.
Mm.
And every weekend when I put my kids in that car, I really wondered if he would drive them all over a cliff just to hurt me because he
Yeah.
knew that my kids were the number one way to do that. And so when you are in that position and you are truly afraid for your kids' lives, and I have a lot of friends whose kids have been murdered in this system,
Oh.
you to be told that you have 5 minutes to share why your kids are in danger, and then all these individuals are getting is a slap on the hand and don't do that again, and then they have this high from the experience in court, the
Yeah.
conflict, and, meanwhile, we're awake all night long.
Yeah.
I slept with a hammer under my pillow for over a year because I was afraid for my life. And then on the other end of that, when you have someone who thrives in this family court environment, it is terrifying.
And there's no stopping it.
No.
There's no one who's going to realize and say, okay, it's enough.
Yeah.
It's enough with this post separation abuse because it is a form of abuse that they're using
Definitely.
they're spinning, they're weaponizing the kids, they're weaponizing the family court system to continue to control and destroy and tear you down.
Right.
And no
And
one
and
stops it.
and we
Yeah.
are giving survivors of domestic abuse such a false sense of hope
Mhm.
because we're telling them leaving is the right thing to
Yeah.
do. Be brave,
Yeah.
and you go into the system believing that they're going to protect us now.
Yeah.
I made this brave decision to leave. And what most survivors find who are in relationships with narcissistic people or sociopathic people is that the abuse post separation is worse than what they experienced in the
Mhm.
relationship because at least in the relationship, typically that unhealthy parent was not involved with the kids. They
Mm.
were, never had a bond to begin with because they're not capable of
Yeah.
creating that bond with the kids. And so now you have no ability to protect the
Yeah.
kids. And when you try to protect the kids, you're labeled as an alienator,
Yeah.
you're labeled as a hyper vigilant, a helicopter parent, all of
Mhm.
these things. And it's a no-win situation for survivors.
Yeah, we know so many people
So
that
many people.
stay to
Yeah.
protect their kids, right? Well, as long as he's hitting me, he's not hitting them.
Yeah.
So then
Yeah.
you get to that point where you're like, okay, no, there's got to be a better way. So you
Right.
leave. And now the kids are court ordered to be with this person.
And you're not there to protect
And
them.
you're not there to be the buffer.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like shit or shittier. Like,
Right.
what
If-
situation do you
if the
choose?
person is dangerous enough that they've abused you,
Yeah.
and you had to flee, they shouldn't be allowed to have that access to the kid.
But then the onus is on you to prove
Right.
that there
Yeah.
is this abusive behavior, pattern of behavior.
Yeah.
And what is that proof that you're going to come up with in a system that
Right.
actually doesn't value your proof or your opinion
It's
and
he
gives
said,
you
she
5
said.
minutes to try and, finagle some sort of defense?
And you're
Right.
looked at as you have an agenda
Yeah.
because
Right.
you want more child support.
More, yeah, exactly.
Or
just
you
want
want
more child
right?
support.
That's why you are not really a victim.
Yeah.
You just want more child support. Or you
Right.
don't want him to have the kids, or you want, whatever. You're
Yeah.
bitter because they cheated or
Yeah.
whatever. No,
Right.
like it's just you get just it's dismissive.
Yeah.
And
No,
this could be
I
mom
remember-
or dad. Their
Yeah.
concerns are dismissed.
Yeah.
I think that even the ones that are good, that are in it for the right reasons, the rare unicorns of the courts, the judges, the other professionals, I believe that they become so calloused to the things, the true horrible, abuses. I've sat in a courtroom where we were talking about a 2-year-old being strangled by the father, and they were still talking about how to get this person into supervised visits. That to me is just mind blowing, but it also shows the extremes of what they are seeing on a
Mhm.
day in, day out
Right.
basis. And
Right.
so then when I come in and I am doing my best to explain severe emotional, psychological abuse, and they're going, but nobody was strangled. No,
Right.
even
Right.
when they are strangled, we're still trying to reunite kids with
Yeah.
someone who has put a child in the hospital. Sometimes I feel like I am in the twilight zone because to everyday citizens who haven't experienced
Mhm.
this, you understand why people go, well, there must be more to the story. This doesn't make sense.
Right.
You're right.
It doesn't make sense.
Make sense. You
Yeah.
can't make sense of it.
Tell us about your advocacy, because you've went through this experience, and now
Yeah.
you've taken on helping others who are in the same position.
Right. It's I think it's something that I have found needs to be hit from so many different angles. Yes, we need legislative change. However, we also need accountability, because even when we pass legislation state by state to protect kids, or in Canada, you have the exact same issues. Even when legislation passes, if there are no checks and balances and oversights and accountability, these judges are operating with complete immunity. They're untouchable. So I have found that there is no one size fits all approach. We need legislative change. We need community awareness. I created 5 years ago something called Family Court Awareness Month, which is
Mhm.
every November. And it's an opportunity for survivors to go to their local city council or elected officials and have November declared as Family Court Awareness Month, again, there's a piece of paper. What does it actually do? It plants seeds for
Yeah.
people in the communities, because this is such an isolating journey for survivors. And I will tell you, one of the most powerful things I've experienced in the past 15 years is watching these brave survivors stand up at their local city council meeting, share for 2 minutes their journey through the family court system, get this proclamation, and they feel empowered. They feel heard, validated. And when you have mayors or other elected officials who are looking around at their colleagues and looking around the room going, wait, what do you mean family court isn't protecting kids? It's taking it down to the community level so that people don't feel so isolated.
I like that you said that, because I think a lot of times, like as you're talking, I'm listening going, oh, good. So the victims are the ones that have to still advocate and, pick up their bootstraps and off we go to court again, even though we were just abused there 4 minutes ago.
Right.
But if what I'm hearing is they actually feel heard,
they feel heard.
Then it is a worthwhile exercise, I guess. I just always feel like it's constantly the victims that have to continue to advocate for change, and it's so infuriating.
And it feels like the family court system protects the parent
more than the children.
More than the kids,
absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Your parental rights matter more
Yeah.
than the safety of the kid.
Yeah.
And that is a big part of my advocacy, is giving kids a voice. The people who are not ethical, who are working in this realm and who have created revenue streams out of kids, it is financially in their best interest to not listen to kids. We have 16, 17-year-olds speaking out who are honor roll students, bright, articulate, and these people want to infantilize them and say that their voices don't matter. These are the voices. My life started in the family court system at 6 months old. My parents divorced, teen parents, and so I have the vantage point of living through a system that didn't hear my voice and didn't protect me. And then now watching my own kids that have been through it and all of these other kids, I have some of the most heartbreaking emails I get is from a 15-year-old or a 12-year-old who believes I have a magic wand and I can protect them and I can save them and I can give them a voice. And, it is gutting because I know that everyone around them, especially if their family has been identified as having money, are being targeted and their voices are going to be suppressed. And that's by design.
Just breaks your heart. Like it just, this is their life.
Yeah.
Like, yes, this is the parent's life, but like, this is the kid's life.
It's their childhood.
It's their childhood.
It's their childhood.
And they're being stripped of it.
Yeah. And it's why I get so when I hear people talking about father's rights or mother's rights, I'm like, because you have the ability to procreate, you should,
right?
That's a very, so a lot of my mission is giving kids a voice, amplifying their voices, especially when they turn 18. And we're starting to see that. I've said for many years, when these kids age out of the system and can speak unfiltered, that is where we are going to see change and accountability. At this point, that is where my hope is. My hope is in the media exposing this crisis. So I thank both of you for having these hard conversations. They are so critical to educating people on what is happening in our systems.
And there's no easy fix.
There isn't. But also, like, why are we waiting till 18? We know that cars, for example, are like the number one killer. And yet we're like, here's your license at 16. But no, you can't decide anything else or have any sort of autonomy over the other aspects of your life. Like, to me, it's just there's a lot. There is a lot that needs to be fixed.
I think, from a Canadian perspective, there is, I've seen a shift into giving kids more voice.
Yeah.
Right.
Not as much as we'd like, but it's starting a little bit.
Listen,
shift.
I'm guilty of it. I tell a lot of my clients in mediation, I say, children have a voice, they don't have a choice.
I know. I don't know.
Right?
I don't
We're trying
like that
to.
term.
I know, and I'm starting to like it less and less.
I don't like it
because I think as parents, and again, there's a difference between I had a kid and I'm a parent. To me, like that's a very big distinguisher. But that being said, I'm like, it is our job as parents to be the frontal lobe for our children until it is developed. And FYI, that's 25, right? So they aren't actually able to make these tough choices. But that is also so insulting to the ones that are living through these experiences. And we're dumbing it down and going, no, we know better. We know better. It's all good. This is your other parent. Therefore, you must go see them every weekend. Like,
Right.
it's that juxtaposition for me that's always like, you kind of can't have your cake and eat it too in this instance.
Right.
Either we're giving them a voice and we're empowering them, or we as adults need to fix the broken system. But like, we can't just keep willy-nillying this along and more abuse is continuing to happen and it just goes unchecked. So back to your pillars and your mission, more checks and balances. What does that look like to you? We were talking to another guest and we were remarking about how there's no follow-up.
Right.
The judge orders something and it's like,
off
okay,
you go.
good
Next.
luck.
Next.
Yeah, next
Thank
case,
you,
next
next.
case. Yeah, exactly. So what does that look like, checks and balances, in your opinion?
I think removing judicial immunity, if I went and had a knee surgery and the surgeon botched my surgery, there is accountability. I can file a malpractice lawsuit. There's a whole course of action. In family court, if somebody, we truly, there is a judge, I believe in Colorado, has made rulings in 2 separate cases that resulted in children being murdered.
Oh.
And what I say is, the only thing worse than losing your child to being murdered is that it was preventable. And yet that judge can get back on the bench the very next day, and she is back on the bench with no recourse. What job in this world can you do that? These people are playing God with people's lives. And when they make a mistake, you don't even get an apology letter. I remember when my kids were finally protected at the 6-year mark, and I expected that moment. I had envisioned it for so long to feel validated that, yes, they finally got it. They have acknowledged that everything I said from day one was fact. And now they have protected my kids. And I expected there would be a flood of tears. I leave. I felt like I was in shock, like I had almost disassociated, because you're expecting an apology. You're expecting that I'm going to get a letter in the mail that says, we are so sorry that your 2 very young children have just experienced 6 years of trauma that they will be unpacking for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
And you don't get that. So the accountability piece, there should be a way that when a judge makes a decision, you have judges sitting on the bench or who are appointed or elected who possibly had 25 years of business law experience. They've never sat through family court. They've never experienced it. And they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And they have no training. And the fact is that we have judges all across our country, I'm assuming yours too, where there are 0 requirements for any type of training, not even the 101 of domestic abuse, let alone these more complex issues. That is unacceptable. That needs to change. There's so many different angles that we need to hit, but that's a huge one. That you would not take a brain surgeon and have them do a hysterectomy
Right.
on someone. That's just common sense. And we need to infuse common sense into family court and have an avenue for survivors to report and actually be heard. When somebody makes a report about a judge, it's being reviewed by their colleagues. It's a joke. People all the time come to me and say, how do I report this person? What do I do? I'm pretty jaded on it. I really don't have hope for things like that. And then I worry things are going to get even worse for that person if they speak out and challenge the system.
Do you think it's a case of the family courts being, this is probably not the right word, but like younger? Like, I think about when, wasn't it, oh God, I'm going to butcher this. We should fact check it. But I think it was like 1994. Like, it was a really recent date whereby they finally outlawed men raping their wives. Like they actually call it now sexual abuse. Like it was something very recent in time, and I'll get the proper numbers. But so that, I guess what my question is, it leads me to believe that the change is happening. It's just that in our lifetime, it's been such a short amount of time whereby women actually had rights within the marriage.
Right.
But maybe that's naive. I would love your opinion.
No, I think that is one component that goes into it. And, another one, we have judges who, even if they started out with good intentions, they become very callous to these things and desensitized. And instead of looking at these as children and families and vulnerable survivors, they're seeing them as case numbers and business transactions. And that's how they're treated. And then you have judges, even friends of mine who are attorneys will admit there is a very high level of narcissism in the attorney pool. And then those attorneys are going on to become judges. And that is terrifying because in a system with no checks and balances, we see a lot of judicial bias. I myself remember one of the very first court dates, and the judge, here I am writing my documents from the women's shelter, and he looks at us and says, if this is the way you two are starting your divorce, you both have issues. You're both crazy. And it felt like the biggest gut punch. In hindsight, I'm actually glad my judge said that because it allowed me to see things through the lens he was viewing, where a lot of them won't openly say that, but they're thinking it. And so, it helped me to.
You got the playbook. Yeah.
I know this is what I'm up against. Radical acceptance, really radical acceptance that I either adjust my approach and see things through how he is viewing this case, or I'm screwed.
Yeah, you got to play the game. Yeah. And that's the thing is all you want to do as the mom is protect them.
It's all I cared about. And, I went into it truly naive, believing that he's going to have to step up to it was before I knew how dangerous he truly was, believing he's going to have to finally step up to the plate because one of our biggest arguments was that he had no relationship with the kids. My oldest at 2 years old would run from him when he came home and hide behind me. And so I thought he's going to have to figure this out. And I didn't believe he would fight for any custody. I thought he's going to see the kids to uphold his image, but I didn't believe he was really, he was fighting me for full custody.
Oh my God.
And why? Why? Because that's the number one way to hurt you, right? The number one, and to control.
Yeah, he knew how to maintain control and to destroy me. He knew that was the only thing I cared about. And to touch on your point earlier about child support, that there is this bias that women fight for custody to get more support. I get hate mail from women because I tell people all the time, walk away from the money. It is not worth pushing that button. That button, they know that that is the one button that all of these unhealthy parents share is the financial button. You push that button, they are going to retaliate by coming after the kids. I walked away from $100,000 to protect my kids. That's what he owed me. And I said, I will zero this out blank slate to have full custody of my kids.
Yeah, and you're not the only one. I write into agreements with some of my clients that even if they aren't doing 50-50, we're not going to change child support. Right. We're not going to tell anyone. Everybody is an equal shared parent, because it's either ego or it's money, whatever is motivating. I'm like, so great. Because, and again, I'm being obviously biased towards the moms, but mom's like, we don't fucking care. We just want our kids. We don't care what he does or what he pays. Write whatever needs to be written in the agreement to, care for his ego, his very gentle pride. And I'll raise the kids on my own and figure it out.
Yeah.
I'd rather go to food shelter or food, outlets to get free groceries from charitable organizations than I would knowing that my kids are
Are not
at risk
safe.
every single
Yeah.
weekend.
And
Yeah.
how do you feel about the term parental alienation? Because I feel like that,
Mhm.
I know, I can see it. I pushed a button there
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's a I would say a pretty new term that I've seen used by mostly fathers, I would say, by
Yeah.
some moms too, but mostly fathers groups
Yeah.
who accuse the protective parent of being an alienator.
What I will say is if we were not talking about children's lives and the lives of the most vulnerable members of our society, it would be an incredibly effective, wicked legal strategy.
Yeah.
That is very much what it is.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, the term was concocted in the 1980s by a man named Richard Gardner. There is no scientific backing for it. He concocted this theory as a legal strategy for men who were sexually abusing their children. And it was the entire theory was based on his own supposed clinical observations, nothing scientific, no research. But when he planted that seed, and he actually became very famous for it during the Mia Farrow and Woody Allen case, where
Ugh.
Woody was molesting Dylan Farrow. We know that.
Yeah.
But his claim against Mia was that she was alienating and that Dylan had not been molested. So this has grown into I call it a multi-level marketing scheme. I
I like that.
completely believe, yeah, I believe 100% that in my lifetime, it will be exposed as one of the biggest scandals of our lifetime because it has given abusers a legal defense. And then the
Mhm.
people who are training judges and other professionals, they are financially motivated by the judges believing that protective parents are somehow so powerful that they can turn kids against the other parent. I was accused of it. If I had that much power, my daughter's bedroom would be sparkling clean right now, and she would be eating a plate of broccoli for
Yeah.
dinner
Right.
tonight.
Exactly. Exactly.
I
It's a good analogy, right? If you had that much
Yeah.
power as a parent
yeah,
to influence your child.
to brainwash
Yeah,
a child
brainwash.
to hate or reject another parent. And that's where it comes back to we have to listen to our kids. And
Yeah.
even I do believe there are cases where an unhealthy parent does work to turn the kids against the parent. I would never use that terminology because the roots of it are so disturbing and so diseased. If you look up Richard Gardner, he was pro pedophilia. He believes that as a society, we are too punitive to men who sexually abuse children. He believes that children seduce adults.
Oh my God, gross. Ew. No.
Oh my
So,
No,
God.
Richard
I had no
Gardner,
idea.
no.
No, but I'm so
That's fucked.
I mean, you are like educating us too because I had no idea of the sort of sadistic roots of that term.
that is
Yeah.
disgusting.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we're not
I
using
tell
that
people,
anymore.
We don't
when
really use it. Yeah.
No, not using it anymore.
yeah, no, I tell
Gross.
people when a tree is diseased at the roots, you dig the whole tree up and it's gone. It's a
Gone.
lost
Yeah.
cause. And that's really what needs to happen. That terminology
Yeah.
belongs to the fathers' rights movement.
Right.
And
Yeah.
but the industry that has formed around it is the reason our courts are how they are today.
Yeah.
Wild.
Last season we had Suzanne Zakor, who is a lawyer for one of the women's organizations in Canada, and she arranged about 250. She's working with 250 women's organizations to try and get rid of that term in the
Yes.
family
And
court
legal
system.
professionals.
And
Yeah.
legal professionals, and they are really petitioning the family court system to get rid of that term because of its masking of domestic violence. And like,
Yes.
it's not to say that there aren't some parents who do have some, undue influence, but for the majority of cases, it's being used to cover up and to silence victims.
Yeah.
And it's
it
really
is.
dangerous.
It's really,
really
dangerous.
Yeah, I actually testified at one of the House of Commons hearings in Canada in the past 6 months, talking about criminalizing coercive control. And yes, we need that. However, my testimony was very much in support of it if we are able to extract the legal argument and strategy of parental alienation. Because if something like that passes, and we have not eradicated that term from the family court system, you're going to have a lot of protective moms in jail
Yeah.
for simply trying to protect their kids.
And then a lot of
And
kids
that
really harmed in the as
Yeah.
well. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And, even if a child, going back to, even if a child has been turned against a parent, when that does happen, I do not believe the remedy is the solutions that have been put in place right now, which is the reunification therapy,
Yeah.
these intensive reunification programs. That's where we see charlatans
Hmm.
who have really taken advantage and created revenue streams out of children's trauma. We know forcing a child or anyone into a relationship with someone they've rejected is not going to be successful. The parents who have been had their kids turned against them, their best approach is to get grounded in their truth. Know that that foundation they created with their kids in the beginning is authentic. And yes, it can be compromised and cracked, but the test of time, they will come back. It's letting them know, I am here. I love you
Yeah.
unconditionally. Keeping that line of contact with the kids, even in the face of rejection,
Yeah.
they will come back. I've watched it for almost 2 decades now, and that bond you cannot take away.
Mm.
But these programs that are forcing kids, this reunification therapy is a complete scam. And it is traumatizing. I hear from the kids who are completely traumatized by these programs.
Mhm.
You call them
And
reunification camps. Is
yeah,
that
that's
is that
gross.
yeah?
That's
Is that a
super gross.
specific? Is it they're taken to a specific place in certain areas?
Yeah.
Like
This reminds
they're
me of, like
physically taken to a place to explain that more.
Literally.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Literally physically taken. A lot of these programs, they're 4-day programs. Here in the US, they cost anywhere from $15,000 to $40,000 for 4 days. And what they do, a lot of them, they use what they call transport agents. It's something that you would see in the troubled teen industry when a child is on drugs and they're, manhandling them with these agents, hog tying children, getting them into vehicles, kicking, screaming against their will. And then the camp is not a destination that these kids go to. It sounds flowery and nice that they're going to camp. It's not. It is a lot of times they're taken to Airbnbs, hotel suites,
Oh, good
where these
God.
transport agents block the door, put alarms on the windows, on the doors. The kids cannot escape. And for 4 days, they're told that whatever happened in the past does not matter. We don't believe you were abused. You are going to have a relationship with this parent you've rejected, and you're not going to be reunited with your preferred parent until
Ugh.
you have bonded with this parent. And so there are
Sickening.
safe, protected parents who have not seen their kids
Yeah.
in years because these reunification camp owners hold, they have all the power and financially they're incentivized. Some parents have spent $100,000 in the aftercare program to be able to reunite with their kids. So here in the US, we have passed multiple bills. I've
good.
participated by calls to action because my social media platform has grown. Calls to action, things like that. California passed Pinky's Law. Arizona has passed a law. Utah. Several states, Montana is in the process, Georgia is in the process
good.
to prohibit these intensive reunification
Oof.
programs.
Reminds me a lot
The
of like a
res-
conversion camp, like where people send their kids because they're afraid that they're gay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say the residential schools in
Also
Canada.
that, yeah.
It seems very much like that, where children
They
were
all-
removed and into
Disgusting.
an institution, and
It is all the
it just
same-
makes me
Yeah.
so sick.
Yeah. It's control.
Yeah.
It's brainwashing. And it's gaming the system, to your point. It's making money off the backs of our most vulnerable citizens. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you for speaking up about
I
that and for
know.
sharing it and because I think a lot of people
We don't
know about that.
Listen, we're in this industry.
Yeah.
We're supporting people in their divorces daily. And this,
I don't think we have those here, but I'm going to be looking into it.
Yeah,
I know we have reunification.
Of course we do.
We have reunification therapy.
We have reunification therapy.
We do. We most certainly have reunification therapy. I don't
which
know.
can be done well or poorly. Like
That's
I guess
exactly.
anything.
You can take that with what you.
But
Yeah,
the
but
camps,
but
right.
these camps where they're sort of contained and held against their will.
I wouldn't put it past us.
You
I will.
have them.
Yeah,
There
we
you
have
go.
them. Okay, we do have
It's
that.
actually, Canada has become a hotbed because there's an example.
There
We
you go.
passed a law in California, Peaky's Law. One of the main reunification camp owners has now relocated to Canada, partnered with somebody else who runs a reunification camp. Previously, Canada was trafficking children down to the US to go to these camps. But now you have truly become a hotbed for reunification camps.
Damn. Yeah. There we go again with these schools. Here we go. But again, thank you for speaking out of this.
Yeah.
Like here you have two working professionals in this field. And we were both sure that
we're like, there's no way it's happening here. Not up in Canada. It's like, whoa. Reality check.
Once it starts, it's a couple of people and then it just grows. And that awareness and legislative change to ensure that it stops is critical. So when I hear about bills in Canada, I'm going to reach out to both of you and we'll talk about them.
Please do. Really quick before we wrap up, we have a lot of other professionals that listen to our pod. Any like tidbits that you want to share with them or, cries for support? Like what can you share within the community for us?
Yeah. My disclaimer, I'm pretty jaded on family court professionals because as we've talked, we have a lot of unscrupulous professionals who have infiltrated the system. And so I'm going to speak to this question as if we're talking about ethical, good professionals who truly care about children.
Mm-hmm.
At a minimum, they need training on domestic abuse.
Yeah.
If I were working in any industry that involved me having a say in the lives of children, I would take it upon myself, even if it wasn't required, to do deep dives on trauma, coercive control, emotional abuse, psychological abuse. They need to listen to survivors. They need to believe survivors because what we know is that abusers weaponize the system. We need professionals who push back against the idea that equal time is always best. Shared parenting can work when both parents are safe and capable, but we have it's a small percentage of these cases that are, unfairly labeled as high conflict. It's typically a parent fighting to protect their kids from an abuser. They are not participating or signing up for the conflict. So they have to understand that these abusers are charming, they are convincing, they are playing the system, and they're getting a high off of doing it. And the children are the ones that suffer. So these 50-50 parenting arrangements are not what is in the children's best interest in these cases.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Tina, for this conversation, for all the work that you are doing. Oh my goodness.
Keep it up and keep us in the loop because
please keep us in the loop.
Want to support you in your work and your people that you support. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time today. It's been such an honor to be here and to talk to you both and to connect. I'm happy to connect.
Yes, always. We got to keep connecting with the goods and keep spreading that message and keep improving our family court system because it's not going anywhere. We need it, but we need to be a lot better.
Make it better.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tina. Take care.
Thank you.
This episode was written and created by Alex Howard and Amanda Silver. Produced, edited, and engineered by RTF Productions. Make sure to rate and review our show if you loved it and give us a follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you stream your podcast to stay up to date on all upcoming episodes. Thanks for listening, and go easy on us. We're not your ex.